and you're embodied. So your embodiment as a goal-directed entity is part of the solution to the problem of perception. But it's more complicated than that. So we could say, well, you come equipped, and this was Kant's objection to pure reason, essentially, that the problem is the facts don't speak for themselves. There's too many facts for them to speak for themselves. So you have to overlay on top of them an interpretive framework. Well, where does the interpretive framework come from? Well, the right answer to that is something like it evolves, right? It's taken 3.5 billion years for your perceptual structure, your embodied perceptual structure to evolve. And it's done that roughly in a trial and error process. I don't think that exhausts what's happened over the course of evolution, but it's a good enough shorthand for the time being. So there's the constraints imposed on your perceptual structures by the necessity of survival and reproduction, but there's other constraints imposed too that you might regard as subsets of that. One is that because you exist in a cooperative and competitive landscape, the perceptual structures and plans that you lay out, we'll say the maps that you lay out, have to be negotiated with other people. And so that puts stringent constraints on the number of interpretations that you're allowed to apply. So you can think about this in a Piagetian sense. That is, if there are children in a playground and they're trying to organize themselves to play, they have to agree on a game. And the game is, of course, a perceptual structure and a goal-directed structure and a structure that delimits action and interactions. And so they at least have to settle on a game. And so that constrains the set of possible actions and perceptions in the environment to those that are deemed socially acceptable. And then you say, well, what are the further constraints? And the constraints might be, well, let's play the game and see if it's any fun. And that means that you have to take the plan that you've organized consensually and then lay it out in the actual world and see if when you lay it out in the world it does what it's supposed to do. In some sense, what you're doing is testing a tool. So the idea that the range of interpretations is infinite and unconstrained turns out to be incorrect. And now that doesn't mean it's easy to figure out how they're constrained. But the technical suggestion that, well, there's an infinite number of equally valid interpretations is just not correct. It's not correct. And it's not correct on biological evolutionary grounds, and it's also not correct on sociocultural grounds because it has to be negotiated. And then, Piaget put a further constraint on that, essentially by saying, well, not only does it have to be a game, and a game that attains its ends, but it has to be a game that people want to play. So it also has to satisfy some element of subjective desire as well. So that's 3 levels of constraint, right? It has to be a game you want to play, it has to be a game that you can play with other people, and it has to be a game that if you play with other people actually works in the world. Okay, well, so much for an infinite array of options. It's a very constrained array of options. Now,